Hello, everybody. This is your girl, Michelle, with Girls Talk, Real Talk, because when girls and guys talk, information is disseminated. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for episode 2 of our Woke series, Wisely Observing for Knowledge to Engage and Empower series. Tonight on our show, we have with us Will Owens, who is going to come in and share his heart, his wisdom, and any advice that he can give us about navigating through today's social and political climate. As we get into our conversation, please listen and learn. Thanks so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. So, if we really pay attention to what's going on, we will see what is happening right in front of our very eyes without
Yes.
any commentary being necessary. I
Right.
challenge every listener and everyone watching to consider that we were made different for a purpose. That purpose is to allow our individual and collective uniqueness to be seen through our differences,
Right.
thereby creating a platform on which we can come together and create an atmosphere of inclusion and acceptance for all people. A
Well,
society where all people are valued, they are heard, and they are accepted simply because they are a member of the human race. So, as we get started with our work series, episode number 2 with you, Will, I am excited about what I'm seeing happening on the news. And so I'm going to jump into that first, and then we're going to get more deeply into it. Eli Lilly has decided to be a leader in that diversity challenge that they have put out to the rest of Indiana. And basically, they are giving out grants
right.
to help companies be able to be more inclusionary in their hiring practices, that if they have individuals of color that are have the background, that have the experience, that has whatever, that they will look at them with the same fine-tooth comb that they will look at anyone else. And so I'm really, really excited about that, because you got to start somewhere. And I'm not saying
That's
what
awesome.
you're doing is going to fix the problem with systematic racism that we experience even here in Indiana. But I believe they're setting a tone that is creating an atmosphere where other companies will either have to put up or they have to shut up. And depending on if you're willing to jump on the bandwagon or not, then it'll speak to how you feel about the systematic racism that is happening in the workplace. What do you think about that?
Um, it's funny, that whole premise, wasn't that, ain't that actually how we're all companies are supposed to be hiring anyway?
That's what I thought.
Isn't that wasn't that the American way in the first place? But I am proud of that. And I would definitely jump on that bandwagon for practices of that. I think that color should never matter when it comes to hiring, to experiences, to education. Unfortunately, it does. We all at some point probably experienced it ourselves. Definitely know people who experienced it. And it just, like you said, it needs to start somewhere with a few major companies and then proceed from there. White privilege definitely exists. So let's definitely try to get this equal for all of us, for all minorities, not just blacks.
And that's one of the reasons why I make sure that I'm saying individuals of color, because we have to be realistic in recognizing that even though there are various shades of brown that Black
Right.
people represent, there are other nationalities that are of color as well that are treated just as bad, or if not worse, than how we are. And so we want to make sure that we're being inclusionary when we're including all of those. Now, I'm going to jump into, and then I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself the way you want to introduce yourself to the audience. But I want to jump into this. What do you think about the Black Lives Matter movement? What is your take on BLM? Hashtag BLM.
I think it's a great movement. I was proud of everybody coming out. You know, I'm proud of all the marching and protesting. I love the change. Um, I love that we can all get together, and it just wasn't blacks. You know, if you looked at those crowds, it was every color out there. You know, whites, everybody was out there. I was proud of that movement. Um, the one thing that changed so much with us with all of this is that, you know, with technology, cameras and people out there with phones is keeping everybody, police and everyone credible. And you know, I hate to see a bad incident, you know, even with George Floyd happen, but look what came out of it, you know, and look at everything that's going on. I do hate that a lot of bad people jumped on it and started doing more rioting and looting and tearing up and got away from our direction of the movement. And I hate that it gets tagged with us no matter what we do or what we say, you know. But the movement itself is great, and I want it to keep going. We can't stop now, you know.
I don't think it's going to stop, but I do think that everybody needs to be realistic of what their expectations are.
Right.
I often say that I didn't get into the shape I'm in overnight, and it's going to take longer than overnight for me to get out of it. And so I use that same premise when I'm talking about our current social and political climate. We didn't get in this shape overnight. So it's going to take us longer than overnight to get out of it. But I believe that the protesting and the demonstrators are necessary in order to pull the policymakers and the lawmakers into those rooms to begin a real conversation.
Correct. Exactly.
Because until we talk, let's be honest, let's just put the cards on the table such as they are. With white privilege, there's no black experience.
No.
With white entitlement, there's no black experience.
Right.
So although you can sympathize and have empathy about what individuals of color go through, you will never truly understand it because you've never experienced it. Even those mothers that have mixed children that are, since they've got 1/8 of black in them, they're black.
Yeah, they're black.
They're black.
You got a drop of black in you, you're black.
You're black. That's what the law says. So if we look at that, I've heard several of those mothers step up and say that they're concerned about their children, their sons and their daughters' lives because of this climate and because of the systematic racism that they are seeing their children experience, which is nothing like they've ever experienced in their lives. So they're not even experiencing it, but they're witnessing it as a parent. So in those regards, we have to be really honest when we come to the table and begin to have these conversations by leaving our biases at the door, leaving those preconceived notions at the door, and stepping into the room and having real conversation.
Exactly.
So now that we broke it in, why don't you tell everybody who you are?
I am Will Owens, real estate broker, Mr. Zeke bodybuilder, online business owner, married man. Matter of fact, I want to definitely give a shout out to my wife, Akeisha Owens. It's our anniversary today, 10-year anniversary. So,
well, happy anniversary!
Thank you very much. So, definitely been enjoying time with her today, and then definitely got some plans for tonight. But yeah, local here, born and raised in Indianapolis. Grew up on the east side of town. Live west now, but definitely love my city. Definitely love my state, and let's see what we can do. Hopefully we can make a little bit of change. I'm a big spreader of motivation and positivity. You know, I want everybody, I believe everybody can do great and everybody can succeed, you know? So, hey, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same track positively and focused and do well for ourselves and for our family.
Okay, so one of the things that you shared, even in the bio that you sent me and that you just shared with our audience, you are in real estate. You're a real estate broker.
Yes.
So what does that entail? What has been your experience in that role dealing with real estate in Indianapolis based upon our current political and social climate? What does that look like for you?
Well, I mean, I won't sugarcoat it. I am a black man selling real estate in Indiana. Of course, there are challenges with any position or any job, you might have, especially dealing with people. Be honest with you though, I never came across anything rude or particularly just malicious or anything. And thank God, is it tough though? It can be, but you don't focus on it. I don't focus on my color when it comes to serving the people or helping people out. I can't focus on it. If I focus on that, then I would be limiting myself, and then I'll be living in my service to those people. So you got to keep the positivity going and just keep pushing. That's all we can do.
So in the business arena that you're in, and I've noticed recently that there seems to be more people trying to buy a house in Indianapolis than there are people trying to sell a house.
Yeah, we have a low income, a low shortage of inventory right now. Just with the pandemic and everything going on. And you got to understand, for a while, even we had paused our services just when COVID came out. It's kind of hard safely to take people into homes and show them or bring people or have people come into your home and you're not sure what they're bringing. So, but the market is still going, it's still booming. And like you said, a lot of people are getting approved to buy homes right now. And it's still a great time to buy and sell. We're just going to have to ride out and the rest of this last quarter of the year and see what this administration does, and definitely after the election, see how everything goes.
Okay.
It's a shame, a lot of people are still having hard times. A lot of people are still out of jobs. The jobs numbers went down, so for a lot of people, realistically, buying is not a good time for them and their family, even though the market might show you different.
In the families that you have interacted with, probably since COVID has hit us hard. I mean, shut us down completely back in March, and even though they are opening things back up, I'm not real certain that we're going to stay completely open.
Right, exactly.
Because we probably going to get hit with another wave. That's just normally how things go.
And that's the science of it. We're definitely going to probably get hit with another wave.
When you look at the type of work that you do, and we've got individuals that may be saying, okay, well, the spring or the summer of next year, I'm going to be interested in buying. What would you recommend that they do now to prepare them for that?
Just keep working. Keep building your wealth, keep building money, put money away, keep saving. If you're looking to buy come spring or summer, definitely just get all your ducks in a row, take care of your credit. Don't make no big outlandish purchases, if that's what you're focused on, buying a home. And get ready for the down payment, get ready for any other fees that might come up. And like I said, just be smart about your spending and save more and get ready, because home ownership is a great thing, but you got a lot of responsibility. You got to be ready, when you definitely come to that closing table.
Okay. So in the I've got several friends of mine that are actually in the real estate business here in Indianapolis. And for the first time, I'm seeing a lot of brokers and agents of color, which is something that I haven't seen a lot of probably earlier than 5, maybe 6 years ago. Has it become more, not necessarily attractive, but readily available for individuals of color to step into that arena and kind of run with it and and be able to sell and really make a good living for themselves, probably, let's say, for the last 10 years?
Oh yeah, definitely real estate is a great opportunity to make a living for yourself. I've seen an increase of it also with brokers coming in. And that's a great thing. There's enough for everybody to succeed in real estate. I will say this though, and always, when people ask me about getting into real estate, I just, you got to remember, real estate is there's no guaranteed check. If you don't move your feet, you will not eat. At the end of the week, you will not receive a check if you don't have clients to buy or sell. A lot of people get into it thinking, oh, well, I can kind of coast through and maybe pick up a client here and there. And they realize it's not as easy as you think, being an independent contractor. like I said, you can make a lot of great money, but you have to be a motivated person to get out there and meet people and shake hands and promote yourself. And you got to have a great knowledge and be able to have people attracted to you and know that, you know, you're going to work for them. You know, you're not putting your commission in front of their dream goals. Buying a house is a really big decision, and you know, you don't want to mess that up with nobody.
Okay. So I want to jump into some questions that I had for you. One of them is, if you had a young man come up to you and they said, Will, you know, I'm out here trying to find a job and I'm really struggling. I'm not being offered the type of money that I know that my education and my experience should be offering me. What would you say to that individual?
I mean, I'm already like his attitude for coming up to me saying all that in the first place. It sounds like he's motivated and he's definitely determined to succeed. That alone right there showed me that, hey, all right, you'll go get her. Keep going. Just keep trying to find an avenue. Keep educating yourself. Definitely, you know, even if he came up to me and I asked, you know, most of that has happened. And most of the time I ask him, what are you good at or what can you do? And being in the field I am, you know, if I don't have no work for them, I know other people, business guys, owners, company owners, and then maybe I can steer them in the direction of them to get going forward. But that motivation is everything, man. That drive is everything. So if he came up to me like that, we'll definitely, I definitely make sure I try to help him as best as I can.
So in the realm of Indianapolis, and because you are an entrepreneur and you're doing what it is that you're doing, the opportunities that you have benefited from. And I know you said being in real estate, you have to have that get up and go to ensure that you're bringing in that money on a regular to take care of you and your family. So in that, what are some of the challenges that you have seen that individuals have struggled with in trying to find that right fit, that right job that matches their personality that they will excel and exceed in?
Well, you got to be honest with yourself first. You know, if you want to try the entrepreneurship, but a lot of people are not ready. You know, a lot of people are just not. Some people are not entrepreneurs. Some people are fine, you know, not having to take care of that side, and more power to them. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of great careers and jobs you can do. As far as wanting to go that route, then you have to be honest with yourself and know your own work ethic. Your work ethic is everything. You know, you can sit there and say, well, I can be a boss, but yet still you're laying around till 12 o'clock in the afternoon and you haven't done anything to get moving. Just be honest with yourself and make sure that you're ready to take that step, that road to be an entrepreneur. But definitely your work ethic has to be on point.
Yeah. I've got a friend of mine that says how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Yes.
And that's kind of how she lives her life. So in Indianapolis, you know, even in the culture that because I'm born and raised in Indianapolis as well. I'm not an East Sider. I ain't a West Sider. I was born straight in the middle, in Center Township, between everything.
Oh yeah.
So I was right in the thick of the African American community, right in the center of the city. And one of the things that I noticed when I was growing up, the people in my neighborhood looked like me. The businesses that we frequented had individuals that looked like me.
Right.
And so it really wasn't until I went to high school, to Broad Ripple, that I even had a regular interaction with white students and other nationality of students that were there. And so although being raised in an African American community and having our dollars stay within our community, it gave me a sense of self. And it gave me a sense of pride in my own people. that when I stepped outside of that, I really didn't know what racism was,
Right.
systematic or otherwise. Didn't know what
Right.
it
Right.
looked like, what it was, because we were all the same.
We're all the same.
But one of the things, and honestly, to be totally truthful, I didn't experience racism until I went to college.
Okay.
And so I'm an 18-year-old in a college classroom, and that teacher was not treating me like he's treating everybody else.
Right.
And I remember coming home and having a conversation with my dad, and I was telling him what was going on, and my mom happened to walk in the room, so we were having this big conversation about what was going on. And my mom has vitiligo, which anybody that looks at her just automatically assumes she's white. That just assumes she's white.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so having that conversation with them, and my mother was the one that my dad was like, well, you're going to have to figure out how to make it work for you. And my mom was like, no, we're not taking that route. You go
Right.
in and you approach him and you confront the situation. Because if you don't confront the situation, then nothing will be done about the situation.
Right.
And so I say that to ask this question. In your lifetime, have there been opportunities or reasons for you to confront situations that you have found yourself in where individuals have not necessarily treated you the way that you felt like you should be treated, or treated you in the same way they treated your counterpart of another race?
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I worked at a company out in Fishers for 15 years. Um, a really big mixed um, place of people, personalities, and everything else. We had a lot from Indianapolis. We had a lot of people that come from smaller towns outside of the surrounding areas of Indiana. Um, Racism definitely, a little bit of tension was definitely there. And sometimes you can tell how people spoke back to you or made remarks to you that you knew that was off. I mean, let's not be dumb. We all know when somebody is, disrespecting you or trying to play you down.
Right.
So yeah, there's been times that, you have to kind of step up for yourself. I think sometimes in the beginning, I always try to find the good in people. So sometimes I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. The first, you can make a wisecrack at me once, maybe twice, I'll even let it slide. But come around third time, I'm gonna say something to you and try to correct the situation. But yeah, it definitely has been times like that you have to kind of, you'll have to defend yourself. I always tell people, it's like telling little kids not to fight, but then sooner or later growing up, you're gonna have to punch somebody in the mouth just to get your respect. If not, then everybody's gonna keep trying to run over you. But yeah,
right.
There's definitely have been times like that.
That brought up a thought. I had a conversation with my youngest son, and there was a little boy that was trying to bully him. And I had originally raised my kids that you keep your hands to yourself.
Yeah.
You don't fight.
Don't fight.
You walk away, be the bigger person. And so we were having this, and I remember this just like it was yesterday. We were having this conversation, and my two older kids had come into the room, and they was like, "Mama, don't tell him that."
Yeah.
Don't tell him that, Mama.
Don't tell him
because
that. Yeah.
there's sometimes he's gonna have to fight.
He's gonna have to fight. And no, and I understand your point, because I have said that, to my kids also growing up. I don't want them to go out there and you can't fight every time somebody says something bad to you. You can't. I mean, come on now, you can't do that. But at the same time, I always tell them there does come a line where if they're putting their hands on you, or if it is going to be an altercation, or if it's just too much, then you're going to have to, you got to defend yourself.
Right.
Defend yourself, defend your family, your friend next to you. If they can't fight, if they can't defend themselves, and it comes a time. It is a fine line, to definitely tell a child that they don't quite understand. They don't understand life. They don't understand. My kid looked at me like, well, you told me not to fight, but then you tell me I'm have to fight.
Exactly.
So they kind of look at me kind of crazy, but I do want them to understand that, it does come a time, you know, definitely in your life that you will have to defend yourself, and too much is too much, and you can't just let people run over you. But at the same time, I don't want you to be the aggressor. I don't want you to be the bully out there. Uh, you know, definitely nowadays you don't live long. Look what's happening to our youth and our kids now. You know, so yeah, just it is a fine line to walk, but it's life, right?
Yeah, because that was one of the things, and I looked at them like, "What y'all talking about?" And they was like, "Mama, you can't tell him that today
Yeah,
because you're handicapping him and you're putting him in a position to where he can be bullied."
right.
Because there are
Exactly.
some situations to where he's going to have to protect himself, if for no other reason, to get other folks from thinking that he's a punk.
Right.
And it was
And you know, and I hate that because I was born in '73, so it was different for me. It was different for us. You know,
yeah,
back then, you know, if you was getting bullied, the worst thing that I had to worry about was just getting beat up. You know, if I fight somebody and I lost a fight, fine, I go home. Nowadays it's different. These kids is different, man. Nowadays, you know, if you do fight back, you don't know if they're gonna come back and shoot you. You know, it's a
exactly.
different time. I really do feel for our youth today because it's so much different than what we had to go through. You know, I was taught to knuckle up with any situation, and that's it. You know, but nowadays it's a crazy world. It's a crazy way, and I really do feel for the kids nowadays.
Well, I'm the youngest of four. So I'm not on, I'm the youngest daughter and I'm the youngest child. And so I didn't have to fight.
Right. Right.
My thing was, you keep messing with me, I'm gonna tell my sister.
Yeah,
I'm
y'all
gonna tell
shoot.
my
There you go.
brother. So, it was a thing like that, and I had a lot of mouth. I had a whole lot of mouth because I knew I had backup.
That's what I was ready to say. You was that baby. You knew you had
I had
backup.
backup. So whatever it looked like, I
The
had
cavalry was
backup.
coming.
And so, but you were so right. Back then, we would argue, we would fight, but then
Yeah.
we would be best friends, and
Yeah.
we were able to move on. But it doesn't seem to be that in today's society. There seem to be these grudges that are being held, and the sanctity of life is no longer what it used to be. And people are road raging, and they getting upset over the smallest little things, and they're taking people's lives.
They are. Yeah.
But the challenge that now I say this, I'm not saying anybody else has said this, I say this. Now, we talk about the Black Lives Matter movement, and I am all for making sure there's equality and that the injustice ends. I'm all for that. But before I can expect my white counterpart to do it where my race is concerned, I need the people in my race
Exactly.
to do the same thing.
To do the
Because
same
we
thing.
are killing each other at an astronomical rate. We are creating genocide that mirrors the genocide that was happening over in Africa.
Right.
We're
Right.
killing ourselves.
And we are. And I always point that out. I always said the Black Lives Matter movement and what's going on in our own community, they're still two separate issues. We know they're both separate issues because, like you said, if I get killed by a cop, then he gets off and gets to go back home or paid administrative leave. But if another brother kill me, then I'm dead. He goes to prison for life. And now we got two families that's hurting. But you're right. At the same notion, it's hard to go fight for our equality when we're still killing each other on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And we're still fighting each other and we're disagreeing with each other. We can't talk it out, or we can't make things work. And that's crazy to me that we're doing that to each other. So yeah, you're right. Because the first thing one of the Caucasians will point out is that, well,
yes,
why are we worried about Black Lives Matter? Y'all killing each other, And that's the first thing they say to us, that's the first thing they throw at us when we try to bring up a movement or equality. And you're right, that has to stop. That I don't, do I have an answer for it? I wish I did. I wish I really did.
I
But
look
somewhere
back
we got to start working together and changing this.
exactly, and I look back to, I was born in the '60s, in the late '60s, and so I
No, you
look
was not.
at,
No,
huh?
I said no, you wasn't. But okay.
Yeah, I was, yeah. But I go back and I look at the things, the character of my parents and the people that were instrumental in raising me. And I look at that same thing today, and it's missing
Yeah,
that level of training of the children and the respect that children have for adults and all of that. Because when we went out to play,
yeah,
wasn't no video games. Your video game was running around that tree.
that's right. It was. It was outside. It was outside. Matter of fact, it was funny because we didn't want to stay inside. I
No,
thought if I stayed inside, I was on a punishment. I
look, if
couldn't
I
wait to
stayed
go
inside,
outside.
my mama was gonna figure out something for me to do, so I'm leaving.
Right. But it goes back to, like you said, the family, that notion of it all, it takes a village to raise a child.
Mm-hmm.
Just it seemed like it just dissipated. I remember, and I'll tell a story. I remember growing up, and me and my buddy went down the street throwing rocks, and I end up hitting one of the neighbor's cars. The lady down the street, like I said, it's a neighborhood. She came out and snatched me up, gave me a few pops on the butt, and told me to go on home. When I got home, she had already called my mother, and I got a second whooping. And that was just how I was raised. That was how the whole community played a part. You do that now. I can imagine that happening now, and I'll pop somebody's child. They're gonna go home, their whole family gonna come back ready to try to shoot and fight.
Yep.
And then that's where we're all. That's where that whole Black community and unity is off, man. And I hate that it went that way, and I hate that it changed. That you can't even say nothing to nobody's child no more, whether they're doing wrong or not, without somebody getting confrontational. Now you don't put your hands on my child, and this, come on, man. We was the schooling and raising was a lot different, especially now that you have, kids having kids, and grandmothers are still raising babies, and it's crazy, man. And our society took a turn like that.
It did. It took a big turn in the 80s. That
Yeah, it
that
is.
was the downfall of the African American communities. I know that happened within Indianapolis when the drugs of the 80s hit. Crack
Yeah.
cocaine took us out like never before. Well, it looks like we have lost our guest due to some technical difficulties. And so we will break at this time for a commercial and then come back with more of our show. Guess who has a new book about to hit the shelves of a bookstore near you? Michelle P. Jones will be releasing her newest literary project, Desperate Housewives of Biblical Proportions, for pre-sale on Monday, October 19th, 2020, at the discounted price of $14.99. Stay tuned for more information on where to purchase the book at the pre-sale price. Continue listening as we return to our show.
Been working on my area, and I have these little bursts of power outages.
Trust me, I understand. I'm thinking I think I've got, okay, there we go.
All right.
So do you remember what you were sharing?
Yes, yes.
Okay, go ahead and finish your thought.
Oh, and it's just how we're teaching, and the upbringing and the household is different now. And like I said, I don't know. We just got to get back and all for one, and stay focused on all of our kids, man. It's a different time.
It is a huge difference in the date and time, because you were absolutely right. When you go and try to say something to somebody else's kid that may not know you, or even if they do know you,
Yeah.
they don't want you to correct their child. They don't want you to say anything to their child. And that was totally different than even how I raised my kids.
Oh yeah.
But I look back in specifically Indianapolis, because that's where we live at. In the midst of the things that are going on in Indianapolis right now, I hate to even state this fact, because it's not a theory, it's a fact. we are hitting all-time highs on homicides here in Indianapolis. And it's not just homicides. It is homicides within the African American and the households of color in those communities that are having the highest number of homicides. And in some regards, they're saying that there's an influx because of COVID and us being stuck in the house and people experiencing those anxieties and whatnot. And so they have found themselves um, acting out their anger. Um, but I often think that we're in this shape because this was the direction we were headed in.
And do you feel that to be true with the COVID and the?
I believe that plays a part, but I don't think that's the whole story.
Right, exactly. I don't believe I believe that plays a part, but not the whole story. You know, I think a lot of it is it goes back to what I said about not manning up or we glorifying all the wrong, the quick lifestyle, the quick bucks, the quick conclusion, you know, to an end. You know, we're taking what we see as entertainment and actually trying to live it. And
right.
I'm afraid of that for just, you know, for our community and for all of us, for all Americans, you know. Like you said, it's incredible that we reached this record number of homicides, you know, and even with the last little incident, you know, when I remember hearing a shooting at the Grand, and I remember I partied at the Grand. I was like, man, it's a bunch of old folks. I mean, we never did no shooting. But then later on, I found out it was something else, and I was like, this is incredible, you know, that we're doing this to each other. And it's just it's no remorse, it's nothing. It's just I can't even explain it. I can't. It's just.
So let's switch gears a little bit. So as we were coming on, I had shared with you, I've had to have very real conversations with my sons, more so than my daughter. But back then, the girls were not necessarily being affected by this as they are now. But I had to have a conversation with my sons on how they are to conduct themselves when they encounter the police. How that regardless of disrespect that they feel may be coming towards them, you remain respectful. You've got one goal, and that is to come home alive. That's your whole point in the whole encounter, is to come home alive, because I do not want to have to go and identify you up under any circumstances. So if that means you got to bite your tongue until you taste blood, whatever it looks like, you know, live to fight this another day, but come home from the experience. Understanding as a mother, I'm having to have this conversation with my child. And at the time that I was forced to have the conversation, well, it wasn't really forced, but the necessity presented itself that I needed to have this conversation. It made me begin to see the world that my sons have to live in differently. Yeah. Because their world does not look like the world that I live in.
Well, you know, they're young Black men, and unfortunately, they're perceived as a threat once their skin color is acknowledged. And it sucks, man. It's terrible. You know, you're right. We do have to act a certain way. We have to bite our tongues. They already expect us to be confrontational. They already expect us to be aggressive, hateful, vindictive, and vengeful, all because of my skin color. So yeah, you know, it's you have to have a talk with your sons and your daughters, you know, just because we're already perceived as a threat, no matter what.
I asked the question before to some individuals, and so I'm gonna present the question to you. When did our skin color become an indictment?
When didn't it? You know, I don't. it's weird. Everybody thinks that, we see racism more now, like I said, because of technology, but it
Hmm.
always existed. It,
Yeah,
it, it,
it's in the
it always
fabric. It's in
existed.
the fabric.
Yeah, it was always here. We just have the means now to see it more, and it's displayed more. And before we didn't have social media, we didn't have the World Wide Web. The news wasn't even televising a lot of things. But that's the only difference. But it was always. You got to think about it. Even leading back to this country's founding, it was always that. It was always for us to be not a citizen, not an American, not always a second class citizen. So racism it didn't go anywhere. It was always here. We just see it more now.
So, earlier we were talking about being raised in these very strongly held and communities that represented us. We didn't see a lot of it. And so when I asked that question, one of the thoughts that came back to me when I originally asked the question was the same thing that you said. It's always been there. The problem is that we were insulated.
Right.
We didn't see it.
That's it.
So we didn't even know it existed to that degree. Had we lived in the South, then we probably would have seen it
Right.
more
Yeah,
because it was
exactly.
more prevalent in the South. Um, the way that the world is going in the direction that we're headed in now, how do you suggest that mothers like me that are raising our sons, because we're raising men, we're not raising boys, we're raising men. Um, and so in the raising of the men, and we're having to have these very real conversations with them, and we're having to talk to them about real life situations that they're going to encounter. What would you say to a mother that finds herself in a predicament to where she now has to have this conversation?
Well, I want you to have the conversation. Definitely have the conversation before anything happens. Um, I don't want you to sugarcoat it or hide it or try to act like it doesn't exist or it won't happen to them. But you just gotta start with love. Love your sons. Love your kids, man. Treat them right. Show them right. You know, Always lead by example. Tell them you'll always be there for them. Start with love, and then from love we'll move on to how we're going to address the hate, because the hate will come. Um, Make sure. I always tell go back to the home life. Make sure your kids are accountable. Make sure your young men are accountable. You know, make sure they're honest. And doing what's right and standing up for themselves, but making sure they're getting their core values from you. Because all this has to play later when they go out there. I want to start at home, and that's how I want mothers and fathers to address their kids. Start with love, start with accountability and honesty, and then we will be able, they will be in a better predicament, a better shape to fight the hate as it comes. Then we'll have the tougher conversations and prepare them for the life.
And I agree with that wholeheartedly. And one of the reasons why I'm in agreement with that is because I think back on how I was raised and how I raised my kids. And I look at those values that were never even said were values. They were
Right,
just mirrored in front of us. And
right,
and we learned them from watching our parents, and then we turned around and did the same thing in front of our kids so that they could learn them um, as well. So in having these conversations with our understanding, let me back up, understanding that this isn't necessarily going on a regular in all households. Let's just be honest about it. It's not happening.
right. Yeah, yeah.
It's just not happening. And so I have grandkids. So on a grandmother's role, I'm finding myself
Yeah.
having to prepare my grandkids for the eventuality
Yeah.
and introducing the topic now so that when they get older, they will be more secure and know it'll just be second nature. They didn't heard it so much that you can just walk it out.
Right, right.
And so
Exactly.
I'm challenged though, um, in the conversation that sometimes, people say, well, you're giving them too much information. I don't think that we can ever give them too much information in those situations.
No, you can never have too much information in anything in life. You know, knowledge is still key. Knowledge is still power. You know, you can't not teach. One cannot learn enough to be successful and to be prepared, be aware.
And that's the key. You know, we have to be aware not only of who we are individually and our role in our homes, in our communities, and the world at large, but we also have to be aware of the people that we encounter and understand that everybody is not your friend.
You're not. You're not.
And everybody does not have your best interests at heart.
Right. And you know, and it's a little weird because at the same time, I never want anybody to give up on humanity. I don't want you to give up on people. I don't want you to be corely hard in heart that you face everybody stern, because then you'll miss a lot of great people who are great and who will do good and have your back. Mm-hmm. But you're right. At the same time, you have to make sure that you're focused and you're paying attention to those who are around you. And you know what? I always tell people will tell themselves. People will tell them all day. You know, pay attention and believe what the person is presenting in front of you, because people will tell themselves to you all day long. And you have to just watch it and be aware. But like at the same time, I do not want nobody to give up on humanity. You know, I don't. That's just probably the Christian, godly person in me. You know, but you're right. Not everybody is gonna be there. Not everybody's gonna have your best interest in heart. A lot of people are looking to gain off of you. You know, but you just, you know, once again, like you said, you got to be aware and pay attention. And like I said, people will present themselves. Just listen. You know, don't overtalk them. Just listen to them.
Well, that's so true. Maya Angelou has a quote out that says that when you know better, do better. I think it is very fitting that I share that at this point, because we learn how to interact with people based off of our interactions with other people.
Yeah, with other people.
And like you, I don't condemn mankind. I don't condemn mankind, but I learn from mankind. And in learning from mankind, I determine what type of individuals I want around me.
Exactly.
What type of individuals I want in my inner circle. And people come into our lives for a moment, a season, and a lifetime. And so it is our responsibility to figure out why they're there, learn the lesson of why they're there. And then when their expiration date comes, just like we pour out spoiled milk, you gotta let that relationship go.
Let that go.
And take the memories and the lessons that we learned that enriched our lives and keep it moving. Because just because a person comes into our lives that brings a negative experience does not mean that we discard that, because we learn from that negative experience things about ourselves and things about the type of individual that we want around us. Mm-hmm. When I was sharing with you about the experience that my oldest son had when he got pulled over in a small town, and the guy ran everything, checked him out, made sure, you know, he didn't have no warrants, and he came back to him and asked him, well, how can you afford this kind of car? And he said that he was taken aback that the man would even feel comfortable enough to even make that statement to him.
Right, exactly.
And so he said, he kind of said to himself, well, if he's bold enough to ask me the question, then he's going to be bold enough to hear my answer. And he said, because I worked for it and I paid for it.
That's right, exactly. And
the guy just kind of looked at him as if to say, yeah, you a drug dealer or whatever. And he said, he then told him, he said, look, I've got a bachelor's and a master's degree. I make enough money to afford this car.
Right.
And he said that the officer came back and said, I don't care how many degrees you have, and I don't care how much money you make. To us, you will always be nothing but a black boy.
Yeah. I'm surprised he said black boy.
Well, yeah, I was too, because I was expecting him to say something different,
Yeah, I was
but
ready to say, yeah. We,
it,
we,
it
we all know what he really wanted to say.
exactly. But the thing
You
of it
know,
was even though it was demoralizing in its form and the way that it was said, he walked away with a real lesson of the world. Because a lot of our young people think that if I have the money, if I have the education, if I have the material things, I'll be accepted on all levels. And it taught him that regardless of how successful he becomes, he has to find acceptance within himself and not look for it from without because he'll be
that's right.
disappointed every time.
That's right. It goes back to the old factor. You cannot judge your success on money or financial wealth alone.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, because like you said, because your skin color, that still don't matter. I don't care how much money you got. You're still not going to be accepted in a lot of places.
Right.
You're still not going to be welcome in a lot of places. You got to remember, we was portrayed if we're driving something fancy or got something nice, then obviously we must play sports or a drug dealer.
That left or right, which
Yeah,
hand
that's
you
it.
on?
Yeah, because we couldn't be smart enough to have a degree or to own a business or to sit on a table or a judge or honoree or anything else. We can't be that smart, right? You're black. Remember, you're still only a few tenths of a person, and that's
Right.
crazy. Like you said, you have to find acceptance in yourself. I always tell people, don't measure your success by wealth or money. You're thinking small and you're doing yourself an injustice, because that is not a true meaning of success. You have to find it within yourself, and you have to find it in those things that are around you that mean a lot more. So yeah, no, you tell him to drive his nice car, flaunt off that degree, and remind that officer that he works for him.
I pay your salary every time you get
That's
paid.
right. You remind that officer you work for me. So yeah.
Well, you know what, Will? It has been awesome talking to you. Can you believe it's been an hour?
Oh man, already?
It's
Man,
been an
it's been
hour.
fun.
I appreciate your candor and I appreciate your willingness to share how you see things and how you want individuals to respond instead of reacting to the things that are going on in the world. I go back to the same thing that I was stating when we got disconnected. We all have to take responsibility and begin to be the change that we want to see within this world. So I'm going to close out the show with a segment out of Dr. Martin Luther King's historical "I Have a Dream" speech. He said, 5 score years ago, a great American signed the Emancipation Proclamation. 100 years later, the life of the colored American is still sadly crippled by the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, we have come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our great republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. The note was a promise that all men, yes, Black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on that promissory note and as far as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring the sacred obligation, America has given its colored people a bad check, a check that has come back marked non-sufficient funds. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment and to underestimate the discrimination of its colored citizens. Those who hope that the colored Americans just needed time to blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the colored citizen is granted his or her citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundation of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. So I thank you again for being on the show. This has been great. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Yes, I have. Please. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So again, this is Michelle Jones with Will Owens on the Girlz Talk Real Talk podcast, because when girls and guys talk, information is disseminated. You guys have a wonderful evening, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here again next week at 6 o'clock with another episode of the Girlz Talk Real Talk podcast. You all have a great evening. Bye-bye.